These are just some issues that I see coming up that I don't believe should happen. When the school tells you about an IEP last minute, they don't give you notice. You are the most important person at that meeting. They need to give you proper notice and a reasonable amount of time. And they also cannot say to you, we have one time. We can only do an IEP at 9 a.m. No, they have to work with you. You can say, I need 3 dates to pick from and 3 times to pick from. Their calendaring on their end is really difficult. They have a lot of people, but to manage and to be there, but that's what they're there for. So I just suggest, even if you can make it, but you're feeling like, I'm not ready for this yet. I need some time to process. That is part of your journey that you need to respect and give that to yourself. And then the whole thing about getting drafts before the IEP. So this comes up with triennials. It comes up when you have an assessment being done and they want to not give you anything ahead of time because they say it's predetermination if they give you the IEP or any assessments that were done. So when I was a special ed teacher, I would give my parents the IEP with the goals, with the accommodations, with everything, and I'd have a big stamp that said draft, and I would stamp all the pages. I'm not predetermining anything. I am saying this is the working document, this is the work that we've put into it so far, and then we're going to come together as a team, and we're going to go over it. I liked my parents to be as informed as possible. And I'd also encourage them to ask me questions before. So if there are things in there, little things that can be adjusted, or switched out, it didn't need to be this big deal to switch an accommodation. It was very simple to do. And it also was really helpful to have the information ahead of time. Then I ask for the goals ahead of time so we can review them. And goals tend to really trip people or everybody up in the meetings when you get goals and you're expected in that moment to read them, understand them, know what they're asking, understand percentages and trials and what the verbiage. It's too much. So ask for it ahead of time. If they don't give it to you ahead of time, if they say it's not ready, I always say, well, if I was the parent, I would say I need to fully participate in this meeting. And for me to fully participate, because I am not in the world of, I'm not a professional like you, I need to take home the information and I need to read it over and digest it and talk to my partner about it or whatever. So let's postpone the meeting. And then they'll say, oh, well, but we're within, you called this meeting and we're at the 30-day cutoff and then we'd be out of compliance. And then your response is, that's okay. I'll write a letter to you and put it in writing that I needed the documentation. It wasn't ready for me to review. So I'm willing to postpone the meeting for a reasonable amount of time. So you want to give them ample time, like a couple weeks before, hey, I'm going to be asking. I'll send you an email a week before to remind you. An IEP is at least once a year, and then the triennial is every 3 years, except if there is, sometimes there's things that come up when the data from the triennial isn't valid anymore or you need new information. So you can do further assessment. It's not like that 3-year mark. It's every 3 years and there's nothing in between. But they can't, it's more about repeating the same assessment within a certain amount of time, that they can't repeat certain assessments within a certain amount of time. So you have to do an alternative assessment. I would call an IEP and sit down with the team and let them know you have concerns in X, Y, and Z area. What's changed since they did, what is the reasoning behind you wanting another assessment? A lot of times they will say, well, it all depends on the circumstance, but that they're not going to do the full battery, that they'll do a supplemental. So let's say they'll add a speech pragmatics assessment, even though they already did the try and the whole assessment, but they want to add a portion or redo a portion. Sometimes, depending on the circumstance, when you ask, if you set them up right for the meeting and let them know, hey, I'm kind of concerned and I'm thinking about the possibility of further assessment in this area. Sometimes they'll bring you information, let's say work samples or whatever it may be, that might show you that, hey, maybe right now isn't the right time to assess or whatever. But the conversation is just, it's important. And I'm glad you brought that up. Everything you do needs to be in writing. Every single thing you do. There are conversations that I want to have as the advocate with school personnel. Feel free to ask your teachers too, to say, hey, do you mind shooting me an email in regards to what we just talked about, just so I can keep it and talk to my husband about it or my wife about it or something.